And so I am apparently live, and do I get to see where people join up? Yeah, I got 0 viewers right now.
You want me to log on to make sure?
No. By the way, did you rock on in San Francisco?
I did rock on in San Francisco. Do you know which band that I saw?
No. Grateful Dead? No, they're not alive.
Big Data.
Is that the name of the band?
That was the name of the band. I was at a Datapalooza thing too, so yeah, they brought in Big Data.
So is there a way you can invite if you want people to participate?
Well, I sent it out and put it on the list.
Well,
Does it have
I think that's just the video link they
Right.
have. Maybe if you go down to the bottom, there's something that says links in the across from start. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Let's see what that does. Event page. Okay, never mind.
yeah.
Okay. Well, if worst comes to worst, people can ask questions in the
I've got the chat.
Etherpad.
I got the
That'd be
Etherpad turned on
Like,
and
to invite people.
They were, but some of the ones this morning looked like they had a different link in their Etherpad that people could just click on, but
you should be seeing a series of links that I put up. I should probably put that link up. And where's my Etherpad?
Etherpad up on a different computer if you want. You need more screen space.
I don't see anyone chatting. I've been disconnected. Let me reconnect.
Check it so you can see something. Right.
Which one did you put in?
Yeah, I just checked it.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Which side? Oh, I
Here's a different Etherpad that's linked on the main page.
Oh yeah, that's the local page. So
You should probably put that. Yeah.
Daniel Chen from Virginia is on the.
Rick Wilson was on.
Oh,
Yeah, he was putting a whole bunch of stuff on.
Tracy.
hold on, that's not the right Etherpad.
Hmm? It's not?
We have a different one.
Because that's for our local site,
Oh,
and
that's
then
our-
there's a different one. I can put the global session in that Etherpad.
So I'm on there.
No, you're on the right one.
You're on that one.
Which one is it?
Here.
Retreat Norman?
That's the one you're on. I just added it to the chat.
So there's a global one as well?
Yes.
Doesn't matter. I guess still got 0 viewers.
What's the?
You sure?
I got 2 viewers now.
Oh.
All right. So I guess I should get started, eh? So, hey, welcome. My name is Mark Laufersweiler. I am the research data specialist for the University of Oklahoma Libraries. As part of my job working for the libraries is as the research data specialist is the data management and data management planning, where the library is offering instructions to research faculty and graduate students on how to manage their data. And as the mentoring discussion started, the question came up about should we be involved, software carpentry and the data carpentry people be involved in the data management planning. And so I thought this would be a good opportunity to offer kind of as a roundtable, a discussion about whether or not talking about data management planning as an official module is the software carpentry, data carpentry, or if we really what we offer within the 2 organizations are the tools, in that we need to make the tools available and easily accessible for our faculty and researchers. And so I'm kind of speaking from my experiences. Here at the library, we offer an introductory course into data management for primarily new faculty and graduate students to talk about the importance of data management. We are talking about the fact that with most National Science Foundation grants that starting in January 2016, all proposals need to have the 2-page executive summary. And so we talk a little bit about the differences between the executive summary, which goes into the proposal process, versus the actual document that one would put together for a true data management plan for a particular research group. And that is a living document that changes as maybe projects change or as personnel change. And so what we do here at the libraries is talk about the important high points of a particular data management plan as it talks and refers to the data management cycle. In which case, what we do promote in the library is the tools as the software carpentry is a way, it's a side. It's not part of the actual data management planning. And so at this point, I'm just going to go into a little bit of a brief demonstration of what we might talk about within the data management planning session that we have. So at this point, I can share my screen. So make sure I do this screen share. And I believe this is the document I want. Yeah. And so here we go. So when we start talking with the faculty about data management, and we talk about different best practices, one of the things we talk about is what goes into a file name. And as a tool, you know, we kind of allude to this in the software carpentry when we talk about the shell, but we really don't go into a lot of time about what would make for a good file name for a particular project. And this is one that I pulled from the Atmospheric Radiation Measurement Program. This is well documented on their site. It's for a climate program study that's been going on for 20 plus years. And it talks about how they break down in the file naming. And then you'll be really surprised, or maybe you won't be surprised, by how some faculty and researchers name their files. I was just dealing with a faculty member who had an entire file system structure of source, year, month, day, and then a file, and that the metadata of the date, time of the article and the source was the file structure. And there was nothing in the file itself or in the file name that even gave us any of that type of metadata. And so we start talking about what makes up a good file name. In the case of the ARM example, that's talking about the site. That SGP gets defined as the Southern Great Plains. So within the code book, the naming of the identifier, in which case for ARM, there's 3 primary sites: tropical Western Pacific and North Slope of Alaska. You then have an instrument abbreviation which represented the particular instrument that took the measurements. Then in this case, it was a average value as opposed to raw values or 5-minute type things. Then it has a facility abbreviation, which, you know, all this stuff starts to be defined, and you can see through the list of all the different things that it makes up for then a unique file name for the particular file. How this ends up playing out is that most faculty tend to be somewhat shocked, and that they begin to realize that if they have good file naming practices, that there's the ability to quickly find files, either relationships between sites or certain time periods, or if they're looking for particular instruments. And this goes just beyond, even beyond the STEM folk, where it takes into account even the humanities. In the case that I was talking about with the previous professor, these were newspaper articles that they were going to run some natural language toolkit type applications on. And so knowing the source, the date and time of the newspaper article became very important, but there was nothing within the file or the file name that would let them know. So if that file were to be moved, or you tried to do a search for a particular time, it starts to become a little bit more convoluted and a little bit tougher to perform. So from that standpoint, that's one of the examples. So here at the University of Oklahoma, within the libraries, we have created some websites that offer some guidance as to what makes up the good best practices for within a data management report or plan. And so what we're starting to talk about a little bit more at this point are some of the tools, but we don't have the time to go into detail for the tools. And I think my issue is trying to do something more formal within the software carpentry is where we tend to be more focused on the tools that help for data management, that really were fundamental to a good data management plan, but we are not something necessarily that would take the focus of a particular course. Now, one of the things we've talked about is to offering a 3 or 4 day workshop for data management planning, in which case then maybe certain modules within the software carpentry can make up for some of the curriculum for a longer time period of instruction. But in most cases, the data management planning that we do tends to be more as an introduction course, and then we do more one-on-one consulting. And so trying to reach larger audiences has not really been a successful push here, at least at the University of Oklahoma. And so one of the things that we do, if any of the tools that we talk about the most, is the actual DMP tool to be used as a potential tool. We talk about the software carpentry in our data management planning, and we promote the software carpentry, and now we'll be promoting also the data carpentry as courses that the faculty should look very seriously at participating in. We are now a newly foundation member, and we've gone through our first cohort of instructors, and so we have enough instructors locally to at least start thinking seriously about offering this at least once a month, a data carpentry or a software carpentry. And we'll have the ability to also still bring in instructors. We still want to do some of that just for that great cross-pollination that you get when you start bringing in other instructors as well. But we have the resources to at least begin offering this series as a great add-on to with the planning of data management, to start learning more about the tools, how to work well in Bash, how to work with Git and GitHub, as we all know. In terms of versioning, that's a very important element of data management that might be listed as what's something you would do. And then here's the course that you can take to actually have your students and yourself learn about it as well. The other thing that we tend to do with our guides is point to other sites and other references. We're in the process of starting to build something up along the lines of our software carpentry curriculum. We're not anywhere close to being able to make that public since we just recently joined. But the idea is to give resources as much as possible. And again, this is just an example of one of the things that we start talking about when we talk about best practices in data management, is this file naming. And it really is kind of an eye-opener when you see faculty start to go, wow, I never thought about that. And sometimes it really is, what do we want to do for the topics? And again, as I said, software carpentry and data carpentry are about the tools, and you can generally mention those in data management plans that you submit for your proposals. You can have them more detailed in your group's longer, bigger document for data management planning. And at this point, do we start developing actual curriculum as regard to data management, or we just make sure that as the tools that we start to add to our modules, if they are well suited for partial inclusion in a list of tools that software carpentry will instruct on, and that would facilitate the data management process. And so at this point, as a roundtable, I kind of want to just throw it out as an open discussion as to what do people think. I know we're talking about adding lots of different types of elements to the software carpentry. And I really would like for that to my personal opinion is that we really focus on the tools and more so than maybe the policies and methods of teaching how to do a data management plan within the software carpentry. Leave that to other groups, like possibly your Office of Research may have courses. We here at University of Oklahoma have elected to go through the libraries as a way of teaching the practices and going through some of this stuff. And so in terms of curriculum development, that's kind of the way what I'm thinking about it. And I'd really be kind of curious as to what other people out there may be thinking about in terms of what they want to see in the way of data management and data management planning. So at this point, are there any questions? Is there anything on the Etherpad?
They're trying to get into the roundtable, but I don't know if you can.
How do they?
I think
Maybe that link at the top, we might be able to share out.
This one right here?
Yeah.
And so, which Etherpad do I put this on?
On the bottom of the one you're on, I put a link to the.
Oh, okay. On the one I'm on?
Yeah.
So I'll get back to that. This one?
Yeah, very bottom
Click that one.
Ah, that's why I didn't have that one. Okay, great.
Paste your link.
Yeah, here's the link. All
So you've got a question in the ether,
Yeah.
or some comments.
We'd probably like the person, but yeah. Okay, we're trying to figure this out. Teaching tool, but also motivating the need for good data management practices. Right. Exactly. In which case, I think, definitely highlighting which curriculum and which tools serve very well towards practices is, as we teach the module, if we can make those connections as we maybe as a motivator or as an example for why this is a good tool, that would be a great way to go in terms of the intro for the tool. And am I supposed to be able to add people to this if we want?
I'm just following your link to see what happens.
That's what I was wondering. I think you can. I think you have to actually let people who
there we
can
go.
show.
Here's the Carpentry competency
Ah,
for duties being
There we go.
Oh, it says on the side, this UK, whatever that is.
You hear us? Yeah.
I got Bon Mi. Okay, yeah, like it starts with
We just have lunch delivered. We'll try to be quiet. Sorry.
That's a late lunch.
I know. Well, we had snacks and we're a little late.
come over.
I'm coming over.
I'll give you the seat. I'll take a seat for you. Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, Mark.
Hi, Trace. So, in terms of actually developing modules,
No.
when you're kind of talking about the life cycle of a data project and all that, it seems like there's so many different disciplines, and each discipline has some of their own requirements, that to try to come up with some generalized modules that other people can incorporate, I think would be somewhat problematic.
Oh, is it because I have the other phone?
Yeah, more.
Maybe not. Mostly was. Oh. How are we going to handle this toxic thing?
I'm open to suggestions.
That's where Joe.
So it asks us data management and documentation.
Yeah, one of the things when it comes to documentation is I tell them there's never a thing as too little documentation. So
You
try
have too much
or-
documentation.
you can have too much.
No, you said there's never a thing
Oh,
that's
it's
too
too
little.
much, too little. Yeah, there's never a reason for too much. One of the things that kind of worries me when we're talking about some of this is I've had faculty approach me about what did I think about electronic notebooks. And coming as a physicist as an undergrad and being taught that you keep a paper notebook in the lab, and when something doesn't work, you cross it out. You never erase anything, right? You cross it out enough to know that it was not a direction that you wanted to go, but if it turned out to be important, kind of like GitHub and Git, where I can go back to a previous version, I can go back to a previous version of the notebook. And so one of the requirements, I said, if you're thinking about things along those lines of electronic notebooks, make sure that there's a versioning control system built within the lab notebook that if you were to suddenly so easy to do a Command A and then delete that to be able to reconstruct stuff.
Hello? Cam and Raina, are you still there? I think Mark went away.
I'm here.
Okay. So my question was, how are we handling this roundtable? Hi, Mark.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. So how are we handling this roundtable? Do you want to moderate or something, Mark?
I can moderate. People can ask questions. I'd be very curious to hear other people's experiences as their own institutions might be dealing with the data management and the data management plans. One of the questions that came up to me was to a faculty member says, if I do all this work, who's going to actually make sure that I do it? And I think that's one of the issues within the National Science Foundation is they haven't really talked about how they're going to be doing the testing for compliance. But definitely I can see sometime down the road that will be the case.
Yeah, I don't get the impression that they want to be testing for compliance, actually. I do want to introduce, we have Gail here from the Caltech Library. So we've been having some conversations along these lines earlier today. So she can wave in the corner there. Yeah, so
Howdy.
because we were talking about sort of these data management plans and a little bit of the disconnect between sort of the concepts in the plan and then implementation of the plan, and that we feel like sort of data carpentry, software carpentry can sort of fill in on that side of the implementation. And I know Cam has worked with a few different libraries too, teaching courses, so
Yeah.
some good perspectives on where the gaps are. But Gail is just talking about core competencies.
Yeah,
you
so
can-
Mark, I don't know, I mean, professionally I've been immersed in all the Purdue-based, that initiative around data information literacy, and they've identified core competencies. And my concern around having two very closely allied communities that I think are only going to get, if we do it right, we'll get more closely allied and build off each other's synergies and strengths, which is carpentry and sort of library initiatives around RDM on our campuses. But more significant to me is that it's the carpentry that deal directly with the researchers, and I think they actually have a better shot at reaching researchers, and the library may tag on. At least at Caltech, my expectation is that we will be on their coattails. They will be drivers on our campus. The scientists want to talk with the other scientists. But I'm more concerned that the core competency conversation could fork and not be the same conversation. So I think that the library-driven data information, like what should be taught, as well as what should be in a DMP, and this is because I am an unlibrarian working in an unlibrary. You know, we're not an ARL library. We don't really care about all that Kool-Aid. You know, we're just trying to make things be healthy and productive on our campus. I see that already the librarians are going down an unfortunate but too often path of staring at our own navel and overloading things. So I wondered how you feel about the what feels like is emerging out of today and other conversations around what the core competencies are that are taught in a carpentry workshop to scientists when scientists teach their peers, and that the library's got all this other stuff on top of it. And I think it's a mistake for the library to drive this, and I would rather cede to, unless you think there's some wisdom of additional competencies that the library are saying need to be there, or additional elements in the DMP that the library, where the librarians are actually hit on an oversight on the part of carpentry.
Yeah, part of what I'm not a librarian either. I was an undergraduate physics, master's PhD in meteorology, and I tend to work more with the scientists in these discussions. And when you talk to most faculty about what makes for good data management for them, faculty are looking for two things. They're looking for free space and compute cycles, right? They don't want to have to pay for their storage, and they want to have quick and easy access to it. And then they're asking for tools. And in that standpoint, when it comes to the library and some of their interests, the library is still trying to come to grips with digital objects. We've had many discussions on what the library can offer in the way of tools. And so here at OU, we're talking about the ability for libraries to serve as kind of I don't want to say clearinghouse, but a service to whereby a researcher can request a DOI, a digital object identifier. Because at some point, in the collaborative world, they're sharing their data with somebody. They may not be able to get a paper out right away, but if they're sharing it with a sub-discipline, the example I give is we have a climate center here, and Mark, here in the picture, you can wave, in that they've got a researcher who's putting together a cumulative database on climate models, and they're sharing the data with economists. And the economists are probably going to publish before the data researcher is going to publish his paper. And so you would like for that individual who's creating that data database to be able to be cited and referenced and have count towards a publication count.
Right.
And so one of the things that DOIs, which are handles, and you can get into discussions on whether or not handles are a good way to go, but it's what seems to be right now the driving identifier for these things, that becomes like a parking spot. It doesn't make a difference where the data resides. It can change in the background. The DOI will stay the same, and that becomes the citable reference. That person gets a count. It points people to the right resource. The library can serve as a great resource because they're used to dealing with these idea of these DOIs. And so I agree with you in the sense that in a lot of respects we're on the coattails. On the other hand, our Office of Research is not a very proactive from a holistic view. And so the library is being treated as kind of the focal point in dealing with this communication issue of what makes up practices and what makes up core competencies. And my mantra here at the library is to work off user stories. So let the researchers drive the discussion. The library becomes facilitators and maybe implementers. So, long story short, I agree with you, right?
Have you seen the Purdue originated data information literacy project and all their outputs, and have you compared them with what it sounds to me Carpentry has their own de facto set of competencies?
Yeah, I haven't looked at them in terms of a direct comparison.
I'm going to map them.
And I think it's, you know, it really comes down to, I think, a lot of one of the things I'm perceiving from libraries is that they feel like they're behind in this, and I see that, you know, institutions like Purdue and the Purdue libraries, you know, how they handled their data management. They have the resources to build something, and so I think really it's things like roundtables and starting to bring the discussion back to the researchers on what they want, what they define as the core competencies. And in much the same way you do as a single discipline, we should start looking at doing as a multidiscipline discussion. But I think every group is going to have some slight differences, and that's going to be, you know, they say the devil's in the details.
So one area of competency that I've grown, because I'm really involved with Research Data Alliance, a legal interoperability IG, that I think is missing from both sets, is the legal interoperability. And legal writ large, it could be private, it doesn't have to be copyright. So it has a little bit of attribution in what we're doing in our remit. But are you guys filling any of that service? Or is that...
Yeah, in terms of it's something I've been bringing up, and it's not really clear as to who's going to take the lead on this. When you ask, the libraries are starting to think about this, but when you ask somebody what do they think, who owns their data, who owns the data, that's an interesting answer. Right here at OU, it's the Oklahoma Board of Regents.
Okay. So do you have a formal data ownership policy?
We do in the faculty handbook, and most faculty sign in their originating employment papers as to the ownership. We have a pretty good Office of Technology that works on patents and getting patents. We have, from what I understand, I don't own one, but a fairly generous sharing of royalties on certain technologies. And I think for us, the benefit from that comes from the med school, right? We have a medicine,
Right.
you know, that really is where the royalties and patents come in, or a really strong engineering group, and we do here. We have a electrical engineering group that's big into radar, and so they become fairly well established in that regard. And so if you're directly connected to those disciplines, you fully understand it. But there are good policies, and it is in the faculty handbook. So
Yeah. So I guess maybe we agree. It sounds like I'm just kind of dialing it back, but sounds like maybe both campuses, your perspective at a large public and mine at a much more intense STEM private, is that that's work that is really helpful if somebody fills that gap, the gap around ownership policies, legal attribution, the DOIs in a way, being able to cite to help with publishing, and because we're looking at using the EasyID, the data site versions of DOIs for dynamic data set and software, where you version the actual DOI. So there's some practices in that area we've been exploring. But I mean, kind of helping with, they're extensions of what libraries have always been really good at, which is around, you know, the management and the dissemination of the knowledge objects and all those social and legal and policies, things that surround them that nobody else wants to deal with. We'll deal with them, right?
There's a question on the Etherpad. Someone says their data is too big for this. I wish my library offered something similar as a resource.
Well,
go ahead.
I think the problem is, and I've been part of the institutional repository movement since its founding, I think that libraries just, you know, we always default to, and our capacity is usually so privileged around bibliographic and textual, that when we envisioned repositories, you know, like DSpace, it was all still around documents. And now I think we're doing, at the fringes of being able to handle data and software, except for places like Purdue and others where they've really made a serious commitment. And more you're seeing schools bring up Dataverse to handle the long tail. So I think schools, university digital repositories are starting to be able to maybe handle the long tail, but to be able to do dedicated software data repositories, I think by and large the library community hasn't figured out that that's a different use case and a different object model, and we can't just cram that into DSpace or ePrints or Digital Commons or whatever our menu of repositories is. We're going to have to, so at Caltech we're bringing up Invenio, or we already have for our library catalog, and that will, so that's our own instance of Zenodo, which is privileged for data and software. You know, we're just not even going to try and make our publication repository, our textual repository, you know, we can federate at some discovery layer above and maybe preserve to a dark archive afterwards, but the idea that the functional requirements of managing and disseminating and curating software and data just is very, very different from what it is for text and hubs. I don't know if that makes sense to the person that posted the question. I think we probably lost, right?
Yeah, I think we lost.
I don't know how long ago, but
Those things in.
yeah, he's looking real quizzical.
Only 30. And it's like this guy that they were like happy and we're
Was it orange?
No.
Maybe we're drawing too much off the house.
Tracy,
Oh,
Yeah, we're here.
are y'all there?
Yeah.
I was gonna ask some questions for Tracy and like your data carpentry stuff.
Oh, hold on a second, let me get her.
Oh, she's disappeared.
He's making lunch.
Oh.
Great.
Well.
Okay, back.
Hello.
Because it's closer to our lunch. Okay.
So we're like a group of biologists, and some of us collaborate, and some of us don't, and we have, you know, lots of samples and lots of data, and just kind of like when do you start training people how to deal with their data? Like when is a, we have like a million questions, I think, but some of them are just like when is the best time to implement best data practices? And if somebody has bad ones, how do you fix them?
Torches. No, so yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think, right, so data carpentry, we just developed the genomics lessons, where, right, this is a particular challenge where people are generating a bunch of genomic data, don't have metadata associated with their genomic data, don't share it with people, right? There's like every data management problem you can have, they have. Right? Right, and so we're starting those lessons actually with project management.
Okay.
Right? Your raw data raw, put it in a place that is shared with your lab, you know, document your processes, have your metadata. You know, so we're starting the genomics lessons with that component. You know, the thing is, it's like with anything, you know, you should teach it before they have the data, but in practice, they're not going to understand why it's important until they have the data and have messed everything up, right?
Right.
Just like everything else. So, I mean, ideally, you'd be teaching it to people before they were allowed to submit a project for sequencing, right?
Right.
Like, here is what you're going to do with this when it comes back. But in practice, they're going to be like, it's no big deal. I only submitted 2 samples for sequencing, so I don't need to worry about that. Right? It's not until they get to 40 that then they're suddenly like, oh, shoot, Marina was right. I should have done that from the start. And then that's when they're like, now I need to be tough, right? So it's like everything else. People need to be frustrated in order to really learn it, which is not optimal because they really should learn it.
Yeah.
So I guess I have a conceptual answer and then a practical one. And the conceptual one is, you know, day one, as soon as you start working with that data type, the real answer is, you know, once you've done a little bit of it and are frustrated